finally we get to record. But before we do that, let's talk about some crucial procedures. Let's go ahead and create a new session. I'm going to have it at stereo mix, 24-bit 44.1, broadcast wave. And I'm going to call this intro to recording. And notice that I don't have a click track, so we need to go into the tracks menu, create click track, and let's set our tempo to be at 124, for example. And then I'm going to pull up my transport, make sure my conductor icon is turned on. And then I'm going to create a brand new audio track, Command-Shift-N. I'm just going to make it mono. We're going to set up our I/O setups. And then I'm going to choose my input that I want to work with. And then I'm going to choose the output that I want to work with. Now in this particular session, I am using my in and outputs off of my Macintosh. So I'm not using an interface simply because of the setup I have to use for recording the input for the signal that you're hearing myself right now. So what we're going to do is talk about disk space. When you are working with a hard drive, you want to make sure that it's external or another internal hard drive to work with your audio. Do not record your sessions on your local hard drive if you can. Now this may not be an option for most of you, and that's fine, but you will get increased efficiency of the processing when you're working on an external hard drive or another internal hard drive for the entire session. This just allows all the media, video, audio, everything to be working from another drive instead of the same drive that your operating system is working on. So that's really important. So you can see that I did create a session here that has intro to recording on an external hard drive. Now, if you go underneath your Windows menu, you're going to see a feature it's called disk space. This tells you how much space is available on your audio drive. If your drive is approaching to where you have less than 15% availability, then you're going to probably lose a lot of efficiency. There's something unique that happens when a drive starts reaching that maximum capacity of 85% or more. The drive just simply doesn't work and function as efficient as it should. So this is really important to check. Also remember from the digital audio theory course that you discussed about different data storages. That's really important to know. So you need to make sure you're very good at calculating how much storage you're going to need for that live recording or for the session that you're going to be working with. There's nothing more frustrating than working with a client and then running out of drive space and having to move the session to another drive, or may not even have a drive available to do that. That can really slow down an entire session or the creative process. So the next thing we want to talk about is naming tracks. When you name your tracks, this is probably the most important thing for recording. So I'm going to call this DIA, which stands for dialogue, and then I can go in here and put in all kinds of information within my comments. But it's important that you name your tracks before we record because your audio gets the name from the track name. So as soon as I go into record, you're going to see in my regions list a file that is bold, and it's going to say dia1.wave, which stands for take one. Now keep your names of your tracks short. Don't use long names, don't use the artist's name, don't use the name of the instrument. Try to keep it very simple. Bass, overhead, just use OH, hi-hats, HH, and so forth. Those are very important. The reason we do this is when you have a session that opens up on a control surface, you only have so many columns for individual letters to be shown for what that track's label is. So you don't want to truncate those letters down into some strange, odd word that doesn't make sense. You want to be able to make your own decisions in truncating that particular track name so that it does work and is seen within that Scribble script on your control surface. So the next thing we want to do is we want to verify our system routing. This is where we need to go into our setups. We go into our I/O setups, and we just need to make sure that we are getting the proper inputs and the proper outputs set up for that particular session. You may even want to go and label things too. So you may want to go in here and double click on that and rename it, or you could go in and right click on this and choose rename as well. And this allows you to rename the I/O. So make sure that you have your inputs and outputs set up properly, because if you have input setup number 3, for example, it could be coming from physical input number 1 on your audio interface. This can be very confusing, so double checking your I/O setup is pretty important. Now, in order to make a track go into record enable, all you have to do is literally just use the shift key and hit the letter R, and it goes right into record enable. I can simply go in and just click on the record on it, but you're going to find that when you have multiple tracks available and you can just simply select across the tracks and do a shift R, this allows you to do it very quickly. Remember that shift S and shift M do the solo and the mute as well. So that's a very nice feature to have. Now the next thing I want to talk about is pre-fader metering. If you go into your options menu, you want to choose pre-fader metering, and this allows you to make sure that you're seeing the signal coming in directly on your meters and not affected by the faders. This is really important so that you can actually watch your meters and your levels as they're being tracked. Now, a very fundamental thing happens when audio is coming into Pro Tools. It does not go through a fader. It does not go through any plugins. It doesn't go in through any inserts or sends. It literally goes straight to your hard drive. So whatever your level is set on your preamp, whatever your mic or line or DI signal that's coming directly in on your interface, this is what controls the level going into your hard drive. You will not use your faders. You will not use levels inside Pro Tools to control what's being recorded. This is very, very important to understand. So Pro Tools acts more like the monitor path on a large format console or an analog console. There is really no channel path. It goes directly straight to the hard drive. So what you hear is what's going directly into the drive. Now when you're setting levels inside Pro Tools, it's important that you need to make your peaks be at -6 dBFS. So if we go into our mixer, you can see right here that my -6 is right at this point, right here. And if my peaks go higher, that's fine. But you want to set your hottest portion of your recording to be right around a -6 dBFS. This allows you just a little bit of headroom. Now, your RMS is usually around a -20 dBFS. Now there's several things you can do here. You can actually go into your inserts and you go into your plugins and you can go into other and you can choose your Bomb Factory Essential Meter Bridge. You can set your meter calibration at -20, and this allows you to see what your RMS values or your peak values are going to be. So this gives you a lot more control on what's happening. So you might find yourself working with this meter quite a bit when you're first initially tracking. Once you get comfortable with this, you may not even use this meter much. But you want to take care of your meters and proper gain staging. This is absolutely crucial. You want no clipping, you want no distortion coming in, you want the cleanest possible signal, and you want to utilize your full dynamic range of your 24 bits as possible. Now let's talk about the shortcuts. There are many shortcuts that can be utilized for recording in Pro Tools. Probably one of the easiest ones when you're working with a standard QWERTY keyboard is using the numeric 3 key. So you can see I'm getting my signals in right now. I can also use Command Spacebar, but right now Command Spacebar is set up on my laptop to work with Spotlight. You can see it shows up on my right hand. Now if you decide you want to use that shortcut, you will need to go into your preferences, and this is your system preferences, and go into Spotlight. When you go into Spotlight, you can choose what the quick key is going to be for your Spotlight. For right now, Command Spacebar is set. I personally like to use the Command Spacebar for Spotlight for Pro Tools. But if you do want to use that, you need to change this particular shortcut to be something else so that it can be available within inside Pro Tools. Now let's go ahead and quit out of the preferences. Now the third way that you can use your shortcut for recording is using function 12. But again, you can see my function 12 is set up with my expose. So you may find that this is a useful thing that you want to have. So really, you're going to have to find something that really works best for your needs and set it up properly. But in order to change that, you'd have to go back into your system preferences and go in and set up your expose to be different. So for right now, I have F12 to hide and show. So I would go in there and just simply turn that off, and now F12 would be available for Pro Tools to use as a shortcut. So there's a lot of information in this video, very important things here. Probably the most important aspects is make sure that you have proper space, you're naming your tracks properly, you verify your system routing, you use Shift-R for recording enable, you use pre-fader metering, and you need to make sure you set your levels at -6 dBFS or -20 dBFS for RMS. Remember, dBFS stands for decibels at full scale. And then you got your 3 different shortcuts, which is numeric number 3, F12, or Command Spacebar.